Hello, everyone, and welcome. This is our weekly platform trial webinar, and I'm going to give people a few seconds to join from the waiting room. My name is Sabrina Paganoni. I'm the co-PI of the trial, and we've been doing this weekly series of webinars, which really are great. We love to connect with you, and I always love seeing names as they come up from the waiting room. I know some of you personally, and others I met on Zoom, and there's always new people, so welcome, and thank you for joining. So tonight I'm here with Alison Bulat. I know you have seen her in previous editions of the webinar. She's our amazing patient navigator, and she's available to connect with all of you outside of the webinar times as well. And I'm really happy to introduce our guest speaker for today, Dr. Jim Karras. And if you can go to the next slide, maybe Jim, you can introduce yourself and your wonderful center. I'll turn it over to you.
Yeah, thanks, Sabrina. Well, it's a pleasure and an honor to speak to all of you. I've been doing this a long time, as you can tell by my white beard. I trained in neuromuscular medicine up in Boston with Dr. Jeremy Sheffner, who's kind of one of the father of ALS clinical trials, and he got me really interested in this area. And then when I went to North Carolina back in the mid-90s, that was one of my main goals, was to create an ALS center and to do this kind of research. We actually had the first ALS center in the state, first ALSA certified center in the state it was at Wake Forest. And now we have 3 big centers. And this is our beautiful medical center with downtown Winston in the background. Okay, thanks. Next slide, Allison. This is just a couple pictures of my team in the pre-pandemic era. Just makes me want to go back so much. But we have, this is part of our team. It's a great full complement of people. A couple things that are a little bit different I'm going to be pointing out, but one is the guy there, sort of the upper top of the picture. He's our assistive technologist. So not all centers have one of these folks, and he's like Mr. Gadget. Anything that involves electronics or connectivity or thingamajigs, he is a wonder with. He'll meet with patients, he'll demo all kinds of equipment. He's got, it looks like a garage he's a big office with all kinds of stuff in there. He'll demo the automatic robotic feeding devices that are new, eye gaze devices, but even like low-tech stuff he'll work with. So he's just a terrific resource, and we're just lucky to have him. This is a few of our folks at one of the ALSA walks. Next slide. And then now the pandemic hit. And so this is what we look like now, all masked and distanced. But I wanted to show you this one picture. So on the big platform trial investigator meeting was right at the beginning of COVID. And there's a lot of discussion about whether we should hold it or not. And I think we eventually went virtual on the same dates. And this is my team on the left. This is the platform team going out to eat after the first virtual platform meeting that was supposed to be in Boston. All of us were really psyched to go to Boston, and obviously fell through. And remember, this is March 20, right? So we're looking at each other like, should we be eating at a restaurant? It was just a weird time. Of course, now we know, but it's fun to look back and remember what it was like then. Next slide. So we have a great space for seeing patients. This is our therapy gym, and it's open. So there's plenty of places to spread out. So it feels reasonably private, but you're in this environment where there's sort of the greenery in the background. It's very soothing. It's a great place to have our patients. They don't feel quite so claustrophobic in this space, which I really, really like. It's kind of different than a lot of other clinics that I've seen. Next slide. Oh, next thing. Okay. So yeah, our center is a little bit different. So I know there are some centers where kind of the patients stay in the room, and everyone kind of comes in and does their thing and then leaves. And I've always felt like that's not great patient experience. And I like the people moving around, and we ask the patients for their interest, what therapy sessions do they want to do, and we give them a fair amount of autonomy. So I try to make it less like assembly line that I've heard that criticism sometimes. So we try to avoid that. So the patients are involved in that. Next point. Yeah, and then, but the downside of that is the patients have to move. And, that's a problem for many of our patients. So we have to have people sort of shepherd them around these areas. We're all pretty close in this area, but I think it's good for the patients to get out and kind of take a visual break, but it does make for some traffic jams at times. It's kind of fun. Next. And then in the clinic, we'd use something called the toolkit, which is, not everyone does this. This is a sort of an embedded tracking device, I guess you can think about it, in the Epic electronic medical record. And the toolkit is something that the CREATE consortium has developed. This is a group headed by Michael Benatar at Miami. And we developed a toolkit that allows us to track people's ALS rating scale scores, their cognitive behavioral scores, pulmonary function tests. Everything that we normally do in clinic gets captured in this database. And then for people that consent, that data gets matched to a blood sample. So it's a terrific way of collecting ongoing data across all kinds of patients. And I like it for a lot of reasons. So it's something else that's a little bit different about our center. Next point. And then there's free lunch. Yeah, so that's something that's different about our center too. So now I will say that the COVID bug police have shut this down. So we cannot do it anymore, but hopefully we'll get it back going. But it was, again, we would have lunch sort of out here against this backdrop, and people can, it's not a support group, but people can talk to each other or see each other, and the families can just take a break. We had one of our great volunteers serve them the lunch. So it was just a nice thing for patients, and we get a lot of compliments about that experience. Next slide. So this is our, getting around to research, this is our mission statement about providing state-of-the-art medical care, which we do through ALSA. And then I really believe strongly in the research aspect and trying to help patients engage with research as much as possible. Next point. So I like to have, one of the aims that I always have is I try to have something always available for everybody. So I do research studies like the ALS toolkit or other biomarker studies that we've done in the past where everybody can be involved no matter what stage of the disease they're in. Because as this group probably knows, only a small group of patients that qualify for clinical trials at any one time. So I try to have something that everybody can engage in and get involved with, because everybody has a role to play in fighting this disease. Next point. I always like to have an open label study. I prefer to have a phase 1 or phase 2 kind of early science kind of study, but sometimes I'll do a sort of an aftermarket phase 4 type of study, again with the goal of having something available. There's a lot of people out there, as soon as the word placebo pops out, then you're talking about guinea pig, and then you're done for that patient in that trial. So I like to have something that people feel like they're getting the drug and contributing to research. Next slide. And then I always want to have something enrolling, and that is one of the main reasons that I am getting involved with a platform study, and I'm hoping that that's something that's going to be something that will have some kind of continuous enrollment. Can you, I think, put up the next point, which I think, yes. So, one of the things that frustration that I have, and all of us have, is that our studies kind of come up and down, and there are times where I've got 2 or 3 studies enrolling, and there may be times when I have none. And if I happen to meet you at the wrong time and you want to be in a trial, I can't offer you anything. And it's extremely frustrating for me, and I can't imagine what it's like for patients. So I'm hoping that that's something that the platform study will allow us to have a more continuous enrollment pattern, so that we can always be offering something to people. Well, I think those are all the points I wanted to make. Thank you for your time.
Thank you. This was wonderful. Actually, a great segue for the next slide, because to your point, that's exactly the goal. So we completed enrollment in the first 4 regimens, as this audience knows, regimens A, B, C, and D. They completed enrollment at the end of December, and now we started 2022 with the opening of Regimen E activities, the 5th regimen, which is now opening up at different sites. And we'll share the activity sites and a special announcement today as well about the new sites. So next slide. This is sort of, the timeline that we presented last week. We have all the recordings and all the slides available on our website, but essentially this shows that while we're enrolling new participants, because that's so important, as Dr. Karas said, we always want to offer new spots, but we also need to do all our kind of, hard work to close out the regimens, the 4 drugs that we're testing. And while the exact timelines might be impacted by COVID-19, hopefully not, our estimates at this time, based on the rate of enrollment and all the work that the sites are doing to maintain people on drug, whether they are in the placebo-controlled portion or the open label extension, which, as Dr. Karas said, it's very important to have also that option as part of the trial. Based on everyone's work, we are anticipating that we're going to do the last visit in the randomized placebo-controlled period of the first 4 regimens between March and July. The range is due to the specific regimen that has different timelines, as well as what's going to happen. Like if the last few participants choose to participate in the open label extension, then the timelines are a little bit shorter. Instead, if they choose not to go into the open label extension, we have to wait for their final safety call. So again, depending on that, there's a little bit of a range. Without getting into the details, essentially, that means that we're going to be able to collect all the data in Q2, roughly, again, of 2022, which means that then we have to clean all the data, lock the database between May and September of 2022. And again, there's a range, but depending on that, we'll basically soon, a few weeks after we lock the database, which means that the results can no longer be changed and they're perfectly clean and all curated. The top line results, which means is the drug safe and effective, they should be available between July and September, depending on the regimen. And the full study reports, which include all the biomarkers and other things that are important as well, we expect them to be available for all 4 regimens by the end of the year. So this is quite exciting, a lot of work. It's lots of statisticians and people working, and we plan on having statisticians and site monitors on this call, on this webinar in the future, so that they can explain the work. How does that happen? How do you actually collect the data, clean the data, lock the database, and do the analysis? So more to come on that. But these are the timelines for regimens A, B, C, and D that have already enrolled everyone, and many people are still on, hundreds of people are still on those drugs. And then next slide. In terms of the new regimen, the one that's open now to enrollment for new people, the great announcement is that we have more sites activated compared to last week. You can follow that again on the slides. And as of today, actually, we're very excited to have Wake Forest and Dr. Karas involved in the study, which is fantastic. So all of these, kind of the list is updated on our website. So you can refer to these slides, or if you can go to the next slide, you can see the list as it shows on our website. So next slide should show you the QR code where you can directly go, or you can use the link to our website where you see which sites are now recruiting for Regimen E. So that would be, again, Wake Forest, including that, and a few other sites, I think about 10 total at this time, but we are rapidly including all the other sites, and the contact information is there. I do want to point out that the other sites that are active, not recruiting, they're still very active. In other words, they are doing two things. They are still following people in regimens A, B, C, and D. So they have several participants that they're following in the other regimens, and they're working towards activation for Regimen E. And so that's going to be happening on a rolling basis. Next slide. And this is the contact information. As always, you can register for future webinars, sign up for the ALS link, which is our newsletter. We really want to communicate research data and updates rapidly, essentially in real time. And so you can access all of that by joining these webinars or signing up for the newsletter. We are working on scheduling several more guest speakers. A few more SciPIs will join. We're very excited to have our colleagues from Iowa and the Mayo Clinic in Florida join us in March. And then if you can go to the next slide, I do want to mention that thanks to Alison and Catherine, our patient navigators, we're really planning again to have more guest speakers from the different sites, but also invite back our partner foundations, the new industry regimen partner, Silos Therapeutics, which is manufacturing the drug for the fifth regimen, the drug that's now available for enrollment. And we're also planning a series of special topics, biomarkers, EAPs, biostats, again, understanding more how our regimens are closed out, as well as general science topics. So please contact the patient navigator if you have a favorite topic. Chances are that we can still include it in 2022 as part of these webinars. And with that, I think we can stop sharing and take some of your questions. And I'm going to ask questions to Dr. Karas and Dr. Sukovic, who are here with us today. So one question that was sent was, how long will the open label extension programs last? I don't know, Merit, if you want to start.
That's a great question. So they will last through the time period where we have the actual results. And if the results are positive, then all intention is that they would continue. If a drug isn't effective, we would stop that open label extension. So at the moment, it's really through the end of the summer or the fall, and then we reevaluate based on the results of the study.
Great. Dr. Karas, any comments from you? I see you have a raised hand on Zoom. I don't know if you... I know the Zoom...
Did not mean to raise my own. I definitely didn't hit that button. Okay. Sorry about that, if it happened.
No worries. Okay. So, Dr. Karas, who should people contact if they want to enroll in Regimen E at your site?
Well, they contact me. Our project manager is Mojta Morandi, and I'm happy to provide my email is jkaras@wakehealth.edu. Allison probably has that, so anyone can contact me directly. This would be fine.
That's great.
We can put that in the chat.
Yeah. And also the link to our website, where our website has the list of all sites and coordinators. So again, a question that came in about how to access the recordings for later viewing. And it's on our website. I don't know, Alison, do you want to comment on where they are, or maybe put the page in the chat? Yeah, I see that you're nodding. Perfect. Thank you. A few questions. Maybe I'll start with you, Jim. Any thoughts on behavioral services such as counseling or therapy for ALS patients and families, and how do you integrate all of these into the standard of care?
Well, that's a great question. That is always a big challenge, isn't it? We have a neuropsychologist that we work with, usually for very specific cases of more, say, advanced dementia or more extreme issues with anxiety or things like that. He's really into actually hypnosis, which is interesting. And he's very good with relaxation therapies and things like that. Our social worker does some of that as well. for diffusing problems and talking through things like that. So we and honestly, our nursing staff. I mean, I think they bear the brunt of sort of emotional support type of things like that.
Great, thank you. Any comments from you, Dr. Sukovich? Or
I agree. I think it's really important. I think we need to train more, psychologists and social workers and psychiatrists in ALS and attract them to the field, just like we have for pulmonary and other specialists, because it's such an important part of wellness, really.
Great, thank you. So, question for you, Dr. Sukovich: why don't we have cell or cellular or genetic treatments in the trial, in the platform trial?
Yeah, so there's no exclusion of those type of approaches for the platform trial. How we pick therapies to go in the platform trial is really an application process. Any company or any academic with a good therapy that's ready for late stage testing that can apply, and then we have a committee that looks at the science and our people. Does the company have the right dose, and are they ready for this stage? And if the answer is yes, then we work and then we work with them. So the first time we did it, we did have some stem cell companies that applied, but they didn't reach the top of the pack in terms of the science and the rationale. So they weren't picked then, but a new company could apply now for sure.
Great. Dr. Karas, there's a question for you. I don't know if you want to make any comments about your experience with the AMX35 trial at your site. I know it's not the topic of this webinar, but maybe if you want to share your thoughts.
Yeah, I'd like to say great taste, less filling, but apparently the taste was one of the few drawbacks of the drug. But the best medicine always doesn't taste good. So we had a very good experience with it. I mean, and that's a real testament to you, Sabrina. I mean, it was a great, well-run trial, and the patients. I really had very little trouble with the whole taste issue. That just people eventually developed it. It must be like coffee or beer or something, and they eventually get to the point where it doesn't bother them anymore. So a minor problem, but extremely well tolerated. I mean, some of the drugs that we've worked with in ALS have been toxic. I mean, Merritt will remember the Cetraxone trial. I mean, that there were people had really got sick sometimes with some of the drugs that we've tried, and that's not an issue with this one. So I'm really anxious to get that out there and looking forward to having another drug. I mean, I've always hoped, Merritt and I both trained in the HIV era. So we took care of lots of patients that were, kind of in a hopeless situation. They were very sick. We were using lots of toxic therapies, but eventually a cocktail came around to treat those folks. And now, we have to tell the medical students about what AIDS looks like because they've never seen it. And I hope we get to that one day with ALS. And I think it is going to be a cocktail therapy, and things like AMX that are sort of a cocktail in itself, along with other things, is going to be where we first start to make some real headway.
Thank you for that. And actually, Dr. Sukovich, just sort of a segue to the topic of cocktails. So somebody asked, could TATCA have the same effect alone, for example, or maybe you can also talk about combination in general in ALS.
Sure. I'd say that we don't know what TATCA would do alone. We know in the lab that both TATCA and the sodium phenylbutyrate are protective for motor neurons. They work on different pathways in the cell. And when you add them together, at least in the lab, they protect the motor neurons better than each alone and better than just adding the numbers. They're kind of synergistic. But in the trial that Dr. Paganoni led with Niels, we tested the combination. We did not test each of the drugs alone. And there has not been any good study of TATCA alone. There's been a very, very small study, which is inconclusive. And there is another study going on, but we just don't know. So right now, if the FDA approves AMX035, I would be prescribing the combination. And one day maybe we'll have more data on the individual components, and we'll reevaluate at that time.
And I'm sure that people have been following the news. So there's been recent announcements about the advisory committee that's going to happen at the FDA on my birthday, I should say. It's coincidental. And then obviously the other public press releases about sort of the timeline. So the next few months will be important to see. Yeah, and actually, a follow up to your comment, Dr. Sukovich, somebody mentioned that there was a phase 2 TATCA trial. Maybe, I don't know if you want to comment on the size or the trial itself.
Yeah, that was the trial I was referring to. That was very small and just not conclusive of what it does. But other than, the safety, in small studies, you can be really misled. I mean, because as people on the call know, the illness is so different between people. You really need to have a sample size like in the Amylyx trial, 130, 140 people, or like in the platform trial, 160, to be able to really tell if the drug works or not.
One question that came in, does either one of you want to comment on the trial of metformin?
I'm happy to say a little bit. I don't know a lot about it other than the science for it is really good by Dr. Ranum in Florida in models of this genetic form of the illness called C9 ALS. And so there is a small study of metformin in people who carry that gene mutation, but I have not personally seen any results or heard anything about it yet.
Great. Dr. Karas, I'll give you the last word to conclude the webinar. Anything you want people to know about Wake Forest and your ALS clinic?
We covered most of it, but I think just a really, our team is just very welcoming. The patients like coming to clinic. I just can't tell you how many times people, you can just see the relief as they get through the day, they work through it. They bring us little presents. We have little presents for them sometimes. And it's just a really, it's a devastating disease, but the experience of going to clinic is always, I feel like I've done a lot that day. I've really helped people. And I think that they leave feeling better than when they came in. And that's maybe the best you can do sometimes.
Great. Thank you. And thank you for enrolling in Regimen E. So we just started the activities. So we'll provide updates for the next few weeks. Thank you. Thank you so much. We'll see you next week.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Bye.
Bye-bye.